Good afternoon, my name is Aiza Ahmad. I'm a sophomore at Mountain View High School. I come from Lawrenceville, Georgia, and I'm competing in chapter review in level 2. I will illustrate to you the history of Mountain View, Georgia from the year 2020 to the year 2021. Here's a brief overview of what I will be going over. Although I cannot address these topics in the most detailed form, I will be addressing all of them. Before we begin the actual presentation, it is important to go over how I planned for it and how I set it up. When I realized I wanted to participate in STAR events, I realized that a major concern for me in terms of chapter review is to make sure that I have a general history for the year. So I set a plan that by the end of January, the end of recording, I will have a decent documentation for referencing off of our chapter's program of work. Well, how do I do this? I formed a plan. I need to make sure that I'm taking the information that I'm witnessing throughout the multiple events of the year and writing them down somewhere, snapping photos where I can to add a touch of illustration, and staying in contact with members all around me to make sure I have the most recent and updated data. Overall, my focus is to keep track of the events being executed throughout the year. I follow up on my plan by taking action. Action is taken through activities such as jotting down notes and staying in contact with Mountain View officers, the advisor, and other members around me through digital formats such as Remind, Zoom, and Gmail. I follow up on my implementation. I believe I was able to keep an accurate form of communication with my FCCLA peers and handle the tasks of recording just as efficiently. Here is the evidence to my submission. Now let's begin. First off, how did we promote membership? Well, this year we decided to stay on a more simple and more manageable float by sticking to 2 national membership campaigns. Our 2 highlighted campaigns that were promoted, especially in our most recent meetings of December and January, were All in with Georgia FCCLA and Go for the Red. In its most basic form, we advertised the 2 campaigns and encouraged bringing friends to the chapter meetings near the end of 2020. Although our chapter membership campaigns this year were simple, our chapter exceeded in terms of meetings. Throughout the month of August, our chapter worked to plan and prepare for the new year. For instance, on the 3rd of August, we had an officer meeting where we had a discussion on ideas of improvement, all while wrapping up our preparation for an interest meeting and other regular chapter meetings. Near the end of August, the team practiced scripts on working on t-shirt design and Korean speaking competition and other programs that would be upcoming throughout the year. Here is a rough snapshot of the notes I took last year, the Zoom meeting, and the people that attended. Again, for the majority of the year, our meetings were digital, so the most reliable form of history that I had were the notes on my fingertips, or finger keys, you could say. And although we do not have the many photos of physical people in our evidence, please feel free to pause the video and see what I was jotting down at these meetings in particular. Again, as I was saying, near the end of August, our group was planning what we would say in our chapter meeting, which is what you see highlighted in the notes over here. For the month of September, we kicked off our FCCLA chapter meetings with an interest meeting on the 3rd, followed up with a lovely chapter meeting on the 10th. This was our chance to introduce FCCLA to a lot of new people, even with the challenging digital format we were presented with, and here is the meeting agenda we used. October was a unique month in our history, as instead of having a normal chapter meeting, we decided to meet in person under proper regulations and social distancing to conduct an FCCLA watch party. Lots of members had a blast, we learned a lot about upcoming events, and received our local t-shirts. In November, our chapter started to focus on specific events in order to encourage involvement. For instance, we had a region meeting on the 5th with various and multiple workshops, ranging from skills like goal setting through Power of One, utilizing social media, to college advice. Members benefited greatly from this experience. On top of that, our local vice president of competitive events held a STAR Events training workshop where many of us, especially new members, started to lay their basic foundations for their presentations. We finished it off with an officer meeting to plan for December. By planning for December, we as in-chapter officers were able to come up with the idea of inviting a guest speaker to our monthly meeting. Ms. Thames planned to speak to us about relevant topics such as financial planning. January was its usual month with its chapter meeting. We did not decide to go all out, and we weren't able to organize as many ideas this month, so we stuck to a chapter meeting to simply discuss upcoming events, Power of One, and other relevant topics. Moving on throughout the year, we recognize members through a series of methods, primarily our presentations. For example, the region meeting recognized members from the chapter in the start of the event through the presentation slides depicted below the text. Members received certificates for participating in the Creed and Speaking competition, and we used other digital formats such as Zoom and Remind to help spread more acknowledgement. Here's a closer look at the awards given to our members, and the next slide depicts the recognition posted in the advisors room as well. Mount View FCCLA has had a series of projects throughout the year. We attended leadership events such as Fall Rally, Discover Training, and Fall Conference. We held a region meeting, as mentioned before, where winners for the Creed and Speaking competition, along with t-shirt design, were recognized. We held cooperative projects where we looked at working with other clubs in our school to provide food boxes for ESL families and put smiles on children's faces with our annual Trunk or Treat event. The individualized projects are very self-explanatory, yet influential to the timeline of the past year. The region meeting workshops were previously mentioned, and pictures of the presentation for the actual event are on the slide. Feel free to pause the video and look at what our local members were learning about. In addition, we conducted an officer induction ceremony in September and worked on hands-on community service projects. Some of these voluntary works were already included before, and I've previously spoken to them about you, such as partnering up with clubs in our school to provide food boxes to ESL families and our annual Trunk or Treat event. In terms of the development and progression of our chapter's resources, unfortunately, although our chapter did heave through many trials this year with successful results and participation, we still had weaknesses that we could improve on. Furthermore, our chapter resource development and chapter budget this year were lacking in that the actual fundraising could not be a part of reality. Because many of our members were struggling in terms of finance already, we decided to place less stress on our peers, and we did not attempt fundraising campaigns because of this weight placed on the shoulders of members specifically. We did have a planning meeting to discuss more activities in person, but we had to lose this dream along with many others due to our situation. Our budget is on the next slide, and although our efforts were inputted to get a guest speaker to talk about financial fitness, the meeting did not go as planned. State and national programs were intriguing this year. Because of the situation happening in our world, members were forced to think outside the box when getting engaged. We started in the summer with the Run for Red 5K and built ourselves up from there on. As mentioned previously, we partook in the Trunk or Treat event in October and a series of drives as a part of community service and Families First. Our chapter was able to bring ideas to the public in an effective manner this year. In fact, the virtual conditions that we were stuck in helped to really spark our creativity with promoting our chapter on a digital platform. The series of events that occurred throughout our chapter's year reflect the core ideas of FCCLA and Family and Consumer Sciences. This is because there is a major connection with the multiple opportunities and efforts that were given an uprising lift in the pandemic. To whoever might be listening, 2020 was a year with distinct and fine limits in terms of outdoor opportunities and in general. The majority of the clubs and organizations in our school that were more relevantly known had started to either greatly disappear or greatly reduce their normal activity as a result. But in Mountain View FCCLA, members came forward and they laid that accessible foundation for community service opportunities, for drives, for leadership events, for national program-based projects, and more. The purpose of Family and Consumer Science-related education is to drive students towards opportunities and general life-related skills, to target education and careers, and to practice practical employment skills, so on and so forth. I believe that our history and efforts were connected to these purposes and the creed and core of FCCLA as a whole. What is one skill that you learned upon during your project that you will use in the school year or future career? A skill that I learned personally was the dedication with persistence. Although I was familiar to the idea of commitment beforehand, this event helped me to constantly come back and record information every single month. And in order to achieve my goal in the planning process, I was able to give a brief overview of the history of our year 2020 to the next year, 2021. I can use this skill whenever I need to set a goal. So this skill can benefit me greatly in all sorts of realms, whether it be academic, extracurricular, or personal. What obstacles caused challenges to my work and how did I address them? The majority of the difficulties that I had with this presentation were all centered or agglomerated around the fact that our situation, our environment, our atmosphere was digital. Our chapter was expecting a different year. It was planning to take a predictable and straightforward path. Unfortunately, this year presented challenges and forced members to take a rocky and unpredictable, unusual path. So we had scratches along the way, but we tackled the path. We continued to adapt, and we moved forward. We addressed the issue with creativity and with persistence, by coming up with ideas to hold community service projects and many other opportunities. Overall, I am absolutely satisfied with how our chapter worked this year, with our history, and coming full circle, I would like to end and conclude with a Mandarin proverb. A journey of 1,000 miles begins at one's feet. Thank you for listening to my presentation.